Hi, welcome to this video on relationships and improving the health and the communication within our relationships. So Steph here from S.Sifandos.com, and really happy to present this video to you today. And when I refer to relationships, I'm going to make main reference my main point of reference will be to intimate relationships, and the reason for that is because there's a deep integration, intertwining of two people that generally comes with being in an intimate relationship, which generally deepens the experience. But with the principles that I'm going to discuss today, it's really about all levels of relationships, all interpersonal relationships, colleagues, parents, siblings, friends, social networks, political affiliations, whatever it may be, and also the intrapersonal relationship. So relationship to self and what that means, yeah? So the first principle is knowledge, and it's really the foundation for understanding the mind and the heart and the way it interacts and moves in any relational dynamic. And let me elaborate on that. So it's about understanding human behavior and the human condition. And when we do, it gives us tremendous insight into other people, but also into ourselves. So rather than being in a reactive state, we come to be in a responsive state of being. And let me give you a very real example. If you're having an argument with your partner, or you're having a deep discussion, it's becoming heated and there's tension there and there's anxiety and nervousness and fear begins to arise and anger and heightened emotional responses take place. When we lack understanding of human behavior, we lack understanding of the human condition and how and why people are behaving the way they do, we tend to just react. We react from fear and from anger and from a heightened emotional place, and that doesn't serve us, nor does it serve the person, nor does it serve the relationship. And that's the danger there. It doesn't serve the relationship. And over time, as we have these continued negative experiences, these arguments, these experiences that don't really serve us, that don't serve the health of the relationship, they compound. And what happens is, instead of remembering good times, instead of remembering all the wonder in the relationship and why we are together with that person, why we have come together to be of greater service to our own evolution and to the evolution of that person, and ultimately, of course, to the evolution of humanity, all we remember and all we focus on is the negativity associated with that relationship. And a big part of that is because we don't know how to navigate our way through that relationship. We don't know and understand the human condition. We don't understand human behavior, because when we do, we step back outside of ourselves and we say, okay, I'm looking at this from a vantage point of openness. I'm looking at this from a vantage point of this person is reacting or behaving the way they are for this reason. I understand that. I also understand that if I behave in the same way or in a similar way, I'm going to add fuel to this fire, and this fire is going to explode and it's going to get out of control. It's a metaphor for the argument or the discussion or that dynamic just spiraling out of control. We don't need to continually create these experiences for ourselves. It's not healthy and it's not necessary. We can learn once the first time, but what really helps is understanding the human condition. And when we interact with each other, we interact with each other from a place of love and care and sincerity and understanding. So important. The second principle is knowing self. Now, what I mean by knowing self is a little bit different to the first principle. Knowing self from a perspective of how do I react or how do I respond in particular situations. It's really knowing my personality type. It's really knowing my character. It's really understanding and knowing my belief systems, understanding and knowing my ideologies and my philosophies on life, because that sets the precedent for how I behave. It sets the precedence for how I interact with others. It's very important to be very clear on our behaviors and our belief systems and our ideologies and who we are as people. And that's the second principle. And when we get clear on that, we act then in accordance from that place, but also understanding the why behind our principles and our belief systems and ideologies. Because we need to be able to not justify them to the outside world, and justification is probably not the right word, but be able to support our ideologies for ourselves. So we need to be clear on them for us, not for others, for us as a starting point. That's number one. And the third principle and the final principle for today, and I'll keep it at three principles, is demonstrating honesty, vulnerability, trust, openness, and authenticity in the relationship. So always coming, to sum that up, is coming from a place of truth at all times, being truthful with yourself primarily and being truthful with your partner or your mother or your father or your brother or your sister or your friend or your colleague. And it's coming from that place of integrity where the inner self, who we are as a person, what we think, our feelings, our thoughts about certain circumstances, situations, people, etc., is expressed accurately, is communicated accurately outwardly, but also we're very clear on that, and we don't always have to be comfortable in expressing it, but we muster up enough courage to express that depth of clarity of self. And that's having integrity in who we are, and it's expressing our authentic posture, and it's being truthful in that posture. So those three principles is knowing the human condition, understanding human behavior, principle number one, so that we can respond better in times of tension. Second principle is knowing our behavior, knowing our personality type, knowing our characteristics and who we are as people, our belief systems, our ideologies, our philosophies on life, and then aligning ourselves with those philosophies and understanding the why behind that. And the third one is just coming from a place of truth, just being honest with who you are as a person, being honest with those belief systems, expressing them accurately to the outside world, and that requires practice. It requires practice being truthful because there's a lot of fear associated with that. We often are fearful of being judged or critiqued or not being accepted, or not being understood, but nevertheless we must persevere with our truth. And so there are three principles of many, of course, that can really add a lot of value to our relationships. And on principle number one, if you're unsure on how to gain insight and wisdom and knowledge into human behavior and the human condition, it's so easy. Jump on the net and research an area of relationship that you're interested in. It could be expression of the masculine or expression of the feminine, or it could be how to behave under tension in a relationship, or how to communicate, or how to manage anger, or just understanding self. There's so many different ways you can do that. Jump on YouTube, watch videos, or Vimeo, whatever it may be, whatever video platform it is. Watch documentaries, watch short lecture series, read a book on enhanced communication in relationships. And that's what I'm talking about, understanding the human condition, is reading about the mind and the psyche and how we as people behave individually and collectively as well. There's so many different ways to educate ourselves and understand ourselves. In fact, there's a book behind me here, Mindset, by Dr. Carol Dweck. And that's a really, really interesting book in terms of understanding a mindset from a rigid perspective and from a growth perspective, having a growth mindset and a rigid mindset, and how that influences our behaviors, but also the way we navigate through life, the people we attract and interact with, and the way we problem solve and the way we just move through life. But that obviously affects our relationships as well, yeah? Which probably ties into the second principle. So go for it. Apply those three principles in your life and see what difference and change you feel and experience. I'd be very interested to know that. Thank you so much for your time. www.S.Sifandos.com, and also YouTube channel, S.Sifandos. Thank you so much. See you on the other side.